Hey out there. Here we are again with Don't Talk Politics. I'm your host, Tahuti Kambui, and our co-host, Sundiata Madison, will be joining us shortly. Um, Today we're going to talk about, we're going to ask a question of our new nominee for vice president, the running mate for the Democratic ticket, Kamala Harris. But our question is for her is what is the difference between black on black crime and white on black crime? For those of you who are familiar with her career, she began as a prosecutor, became a district attorney, then attorney general for the state of California. So she has an extensive record in terms of quote unquote crime and the attitude towards crime. So our question is, what is the roots behind that, and what is the history of her personal politics, I guess, towards crime, and then for us as a people, what is our position in terms of the criminal justice system and the buzzwords that go around black on black crime. That is often used by people who attempt to downplay the attacks that happen to our people as if we just do it to ourselves. So what, quote unquote, are we complaining about? But let's look at the politics behind that. Let's look at the strategies. If you remember, some of our history has been regarding our political affiliations. They usually go with what our perception of what is best for us at the time. And usually, politics have different definitions, and politicians change with the weather and the wind. So we need to look at that. And then particularly Kamala Harris, how is she? Has she stayed the course, or has she kind of shifted depending on the climate, the political climate? So historically, as was noted in the beginning, most black people were Republicans. Historically, they were the party of, quote unquote, the party of Lincoln, radical Republicans, reform, things that were supposed to be progressive. Historically, the Reconstruction, and the legislation that moved us towards, I'm not going to say equality really, but it moved us towards progress. But when we look at what happened, there was a strategy, a political strategy called the Southern Strategy later on. Most of these Confederates, or the people that were in favor of slavery and the whole social order, they dealt with the laws that were used to keep us suppressed. So we had laws. We had the vagrancy laws, which were part of the black codes, and they passed a number of laws to take back the gains that our people had made politically. We were beginning to be elected to offices. We were voting, black men, because the black women didn't get the vote until women's suffrage. But we were making these gains, and then there was always a pushback. And the pushback came in the form of compromise. The presidential election between Rutherford B. Hayes and Tilden was a classic example where the South was promised the removal of the federal troops in exchange for allowing Rutherford B. Hayes to be president. And when he became president, he removed the troops. And then, there was when you saw the rise in the terror, the second terror stages, Ku Klux Klan and all these other organizations against the black people. So when we look at that, there was a Southern strategy that changed the old Dixiecrats, as they were called, they went after them to make them Republicans. And that was led, if you go to 48, I believe it was Strom Thurmond, who has some personal history with black people, but that has nothing to do with his politics. His politics was he went with the movement to move the Dixiecrats, or they were Democrats, who they went for the Republican strategy, because as long as it was based on oppressing black people and it was race-based, they had no problem switching affiliation. And as a matter of fact, that bipartisan, lie, that's the best way I could put it, is that because both have the same interests, both accomplish the same goal in the end. It's like having a chicken, and you're the chicken, and then you're asking yourself, well, which one would I rather eat, me, the fox who's going to trick me into becoming his dinner, or the wolf who is going to be straight up about me being his dinner and devour me? What difference does that make if you are devoured in the end? And so it brings us forward some to where we are now. Now let's look at Kamala Harris in her politics. So part of that strategy, or Southern strategy, was put together with Nixon, prior to Nixon's election, where they were going after the rural, working class, quote unquote, heart of America voter, who was very amicable to race politics. And so they would use code words. They wouldn't be straight up about the race of the people. They would just say words like, I'm tough on crime. We have a war on crime, a war on drugs, and code words of that nature, quote unquote, entitlement programs, things of this nature. These buzzwords started coming out, and they were like whistleblowing, but they were still tied to attitudes towards our people. So with that Southern strategy, what we began was a movement towards people switching parties, but never switching the oppression of our people. So what happened was, with that Southern strategy, later on, after Nixon was successful and Reagan was very successful with it, and then when Reagan was dominating and going with his program, the Southern Democrats started thinking. And so, in particularly Bill Clinton, he came up with a program showing that he was going to be tougher on crime, because they figured that was the political climate of the day. So when you're tough on crime, that means you're tough on black people. And he put together some of the most oppressive laws, the 3 strikes laws, and all of these laws for nonviolent offenders. And you saw the prison population just boom. The prison population explode under him. And so with all of our people being targeted by these laws and the sale of narcotics in our community, the dropping off of narcotics in our community, dropping off of weapons in our community, and the fostering of these type of activities, we had a very large increase of our young men being incarcerated for nonviolent crimes. And there was no reform. There was no rehabilitation. It was sheer numbers for life sentences, for activities that could easily been corrected. So with that strategy, that was the climate. So in comes our sister, Kamala Harris. Now, when she's coming onto the scene, it is in that time where the political climate is be tough on crime. And so as a prosecutor, she was that, winning 87% of her cases. And then she gets promoted to DA. And as a DA, she's, again, tough on crime. And her whole edict is that she puts out how she was a reformer of the prison systems and everything else as the California State Attorney General. But you got to look at that. You have to look at it because she waffled with the climate. So at the time when Clinton was president and those strategies were being employed, she went with that. She was tough. She was prosecuting our people. She was putting them in jail with these crazy, horrendous cases. And even after police brutality became an issue, she still protected officers, regardless of the reforms that she was later, when the political climate changed. She was a proponent of prison reform and all these other things, but that was the political climate changing. So our question is, where does she stand? Where does she stand? Is it just go with whatever the political climate is, or is it where we are as a people who have been wronged by a system? And how did you stand? Did you just further your career based on whatever the politics were at the time? And I don't know how people feel about that. I mean, we can celebrate. You know, we always celebrate the icons. We celebrated Obama, but look at the policies. Look at the policies and see how it helped us. When you celebrate now Kamala Harris, but look at the policies. Because we got to be loyal to what is good for us, not just having symbols or people or tokens or whatever else we're going to call that in position to execute policy that's still oppressive to us. So I want everybody to think about that. And when we get to calls, I want you to just be honestly look at the records, because regardless of what is said, we are the largest group percentage-wise in prisons. We are the largest group percentage-wise that die at the hands of police and are facing police brutality. We are the largest group. And so what is policing? And what is all of that? What is the crime? What is this thing that they talk about when they say black on black crime? Is black on black crime is just this innate rage that we have when we see ourselves and attack each other? Dr. Bobby Wright said black on black crime is a result of basically self-hate. And the reason why we attack ourselves is because it's allowed, and we have not been taught to attack our enemy. Now you can take that any way you want, but it's true. We will see we feel the rage of betrayal with each other, and we have knockout, drag out fights and shootings and stabbings and killing with each other. But a known enemy of us can come into our community, lock us up, or line us up and deal with us in a way that we know is wrong, and we will all stand by, concede authority, and give pictures and give a bypass or a pass in our community for those locking us up, killing us, abusing us, and doing these things. So our questions are always going to be, what is our purpose? What is our political philosophy? And what is black on black crime? What is that? If that's not a byproduct of white on black crime, what is it? Where did we learn black on to be that way toward each other? Where did we learn to call each other these names? Where did we learn to be corporal in our punishment of each other? Where did we learn to brutalize each other? Where did we get that from? So this is our question, and this is the question for us to really start looking into, the antecedents. What came before? What programmed us into this self-hating manifestation that they call black on black crime? Sunyata, do you have any thoughts on that? Thank you for coming, brother.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
All right.
I don't know if you covered it, but we're going to be talking about a little bit of Amos Wilson's book and his work, and Bobby Wright's book, and everything that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, and that's everything deals with the mind. And we know this because our behavior here is different than our behavior other places in the world where you don't have these murder rates. So that's one thing.
Right. I didn't talk about the books we were going to cover, but I did cover quite a bit of that. The mindset, you don't see it manifested in other places. You see it manufactured in other places. When they manufacture war, and they manufacture conflict, and they manufacture the need for, I guess, white paternalism.
Exactly.
You know, where they got to come in as the peacemaker. They have to come in as
Authority.
the authority, the moral authority, and they're going to teach you how to run an election like you about to see now.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to teach you how to be democratic when there's no democracy on the planet. Mm-hmm. They're going to teach us how to, everyone how to act and behave when all they've done as far as quote unquote a civilization is to trace things from one war to another conflict to another conflict.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's interesting. We always talk about the reason why we're talking about today black on black crime is because you always hear when we start talking about what they've done to us, you always hear us say, oh, but what about? And I was watching a clip from 1970s with Muhammad Ali with the Jackson 5, and he was talking about doing economic development with black people. And the reporter said, but you guys are killing each other in Chicago. So these are the buzzwords that we're also going to start talking about. These are the strategies that the FBI and other groups put in our communities to deflect, and it has an ounce of truth in it. Yes, we are violent toward each other. Yes, we do have some type of issues going on with each other, but they don't really want to talk about why is that. They just want to bring it up to deflect you talking about someone else killing you, which makes no sense.
It makes none. But if you talk about Amos Wilson, like some of his work, mm-hmm. when he talks about black on black violence.
Right. Mm-hmm.
He talks about violence because the crime was already committed. Mm-hmm. But the violence is a mindset that's cultivated and encouraged by society. It's subliminal in its planting of violent images of black people being victimized. It's in cartoons. Mm-hmm. It's in advertisement. It's played out on fields when we play football and other games like that. The violence is cultivated. Mm-hmm. Although they in so-called embrace quote-unquote nonviolent struggle and methods of protest, they have never abandoned violence towards us.
Exactly. And then the problem comes in when our children emulate the so-called dominant society. You can see it in the names that the children, even when in crime, they pick names like the lynch mob that has a history of killing black people. They pick names like, Little Caesar and Little Al Capone. They're names that shows that they're trying to live up to junior mafia. They're actually trying to live up to the image of the white criminal who has vandalized the society. So in their eyes, the white criminal is a model, a role model. So and you also see this when all you have to do is go to a bus stop and see our children play with one another, and you'll see the self-hatred that manifests itself that's been taught to them. Because it's not natural to say you so black, and we think it is. We think it's natural to hate the color of our skin. You could talk to anyone who's a darker pigment and ask them, how were you treated in your family? A lot of them have horror stories about how they treated, and we don't talk about this, but it manifests itself because the dominant society's taught us to hate that skin color. We say self-hatred, but we don't fully understand what it means. Because same people who say, oh, yeah, we have self-hatred will say, what about black on black crime? Well, that's part of the self-hatred that was perpetrated on you by white on black crime,
Yeah, but we have to, like you said, we have to have the honest conversation about that, and we're afraid to because we're going to be, it's painful, for one.
Exactly.
It's painful to admit that you basically concede superiority of another race.
That's right.
And you do that manifested within your own race with this colorism, light skin versus dark skin, African featured versus European quote unquote features, although all features are found in us. But,
right.
When you do that as, people say, well, it's just my choice or it's just my preference or, You know,
That preference was given to
it
you.
was given to you. It was
Right.
programmed
It was
to you.
programmed.
You know, when we look at TV, that's why they call it a TV program. It's
That's right.
programming you. It's giving you instructions.
That's right.
You got to look at those things, and you got to look at these suggestions. There's no way that this drops out of the air.
No, you can look at some of the sitcoms. You look at Martin's show where the lighter skinned girl had Martin, and the darker sister who looked nice. He talked to her about her like she was, you know. And then you can look at other shows where you have the darker skinned actress as opposed to the lighter skinned actress.
Yeah, you know, I do a whole
Yeah,
series on
yeah,
that.
yeah.
If you go back to all of our shows, when we broke into the television with Norman Lear, with all of his programming, you start with Sanford and Son and how he talked about Lamont, you know, and everybody was making a joke about
Aunt
his
Esther.
empire, Aunt Esther, how ugly she was, and then you had the church, which was Aunt Esther, and the liquor store, which was Woody, her husband, married together. And that's what you see in our community, church and liquor store, each corner. And then you had Good Times, where, you know, nothing ever went right. You know, they always pulled the rug up under their seat. But if you just listen to the show, the song.
Right, exactly.
Just looking out of the window, watching the asphalt grow.
Right.
Thinking how it all looks hand-me-down. Good times, they flash it.
Right.
Keeping your head above water. Making a way, if you can. Temporary layoffs.
Yeah.
Good time, you broke. Easy credit rip off.
Rip-offs.
Somebody done stole something and tricked you. Good times.
Right. Yeah. And watching that over and over, it plays on your psyche.
It's in your
plays on
mind.
your psyche. And then you, like I said, you see it in our children because they don't have a filter. And so you just have to stand at a bus stop and watch children gather at a bus stop and see them dog one another out based upon our race. Some real vicious stuff goes on based upon the race, but that's because they've learned it from the womb. They've learned it because we know that black babies are actually born advanced because white scientists took tests and they've shown that, and that's part of Amos Wilson's book, Awakening the Genius of Black Children. So it starts reversing itself at 3 years old because at 3 years old you start picking up on the cues of society and what people are saying. And you really honestly have black people who do dislike the color of their skin. And then I remember Color Purple when Whoopi Goldberg's character. It was you know, I saw it over there by the ball, and it was one scene that really was just very, very disappointing. Her character, another character comes in and is looking at her and said, "You are so ugly."
Oh yeah, you show is
You
ugly.
show is ugly, and the black audience just laughed.
Suge Avery, that's the name. Yeah. Oh, everybody fell out.
And here the sister is, her face for the world to see and for children to see it, and they have to decipher what makes her ugly. And we do this over repeatedly.
But the bigger picture is who was telling that story.
Who told that story?
Who told that story?
Exactly.
That was Steven Spielberg telling the story.
Yes,
yeah, it was written by
Alice
Walker,
Walker.
but he was telling the story.
And you would never see that in a Jewish movie
Never.
where a Jewish character would look at another Jewish character and say that.
Never.
But you have him in our area and pushed by Oprah Winfrey.
Now here's a man that had the world loving an ugly alien named E.T.
Yeah, exactly.
Remember that?
Oh, yeah,
There was
exactly.
E.T. People crying
Yep.
crocodile tears
Pull
for
the-
E.T.
yep. Pull
But
the
he
heartstrings.
gonna still say that.
Denigrate
Denigrate,
this sister
exactly.
on the screen like that.
We want to remind you guys you can call in at 424-390-6993. We'll be available to take these calls coming up in about 2 minutes. And also, if you haven't already, please click subscribe under the We Are LA, the subscribe button on your screen. Just click that so that we can continue moving forward and building black positivity.
That's right. And then, you know, I want to talk about also how how the 60s and 70s, they taught us to be non-racial, how they taught you not to see color, how to be colorblind. At the same time, still pushing negative images, anti-black images. So on one level, on the subconscious level, you're being subjected to all this advertising and shows and movies and music that's telling you being black is bad. But when you try to address it, people are like, well, we don't want to be like them. They have all these saying, these buzzwords, once again, that get you to really play down your strength, and that is your unity based upon the race and the color of your skin. So we had this guilt on one end, but yet we had the guilt by society on one hand to talk about race, but yet on the other, they were constantly telling us negative images about race, the welfare queen and things like that, you know, killing the father off in different shows and movies. And you go in these movies, the black exploitations, flicks where they had the single mamas and the father's always up to no good and all this stuff. Yeah, they promoted it. So at the same time, they pushed this non-racial, and we're still suffering to that to this day. And you see it in our so-called black politicians. You see all around us.
So what's your view on Sister Kamala Harris? She went to your alma mater.
Yeah.
Talk to us.
She
about
left just
that.
when we came in. Yeah, but she suffers from what my so-called alma mater suffers from, and that is at the times they like to smooth closer to the power elite instead of really the people. And at times you have to remember it's a stepping stone, and they see our people as a stepping stone. You use race to get in power, and I say that to say because when you look at her record here in California with how she treated innocent black men, not even guilty men, but innocent black men, and how cruel she was toward innocent black men. I just do not understand, how we can applaud the decision by the Democratic Party at a time when we have a weak candidate on the other side. The Democratic Party could have put a very, very progressive person in, but yet they give you a lesser of two evils choice.
Right.
Someone who showed to have no heart. You can look at her cases.
Well, I don't think people even understand that 90% of prosecutors are white. 90% are white. 80% are male.
Wow.
And she's coming up inside of that.
Right.
So she has to prove herself.
Yep.
She proved herself to white males.
Yes, she did.
And that is their attitude, and that's she went right along with it.
Yeah,
now, and like you said, innocent people that she saw the evidence that it was innocent, and
the
still
DNA, refused and
refused
denied
to
the
open.
DNA.
Yeah,
the young man
it.
Cooper up north. There was a murder in Chino Hills. Where these men.
Kevin Cooper.
Kevin Cooper up north, who was innocent, was just grabbed off the street, and she showed up for the conviction, just to hear the conviction and walk away with what she felt was a victory to put this young man in jail. He eventually got appealed and got out and won, but he was hurt. He said to look across the way and see this black woman there smiling. And then also, she at the same time she was doing that to black males, she was hiding the records of abusive police officers so the community could not review it. There was a man, Steve Mnuchin, who works in the Trump administration, the Treasury. It's just like, come on, man. It's just ridiculous. It's like, how are you going to give a pass to Steve, who in the banking industry committed all kind of frauds? She gave a pass to, did not prosecute him, and now he turns around and works with the Trump administration. You see this fine line.
We saw one person in the chat said that she proved how much she was aligning with white men, that she married one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's the truth. I mean, that's something we don't like to talk about. Again, there's some things that we don't like to talk about that we have to talk about. It's like we want change without talking about hard truths. We want change without talking about hard. Like one of them is Biden cleared the way for Clarence Thomas to be on the Supreme Court.
Absolutely,
because it was Biden who chaired the committee that was overseeing Anita Hill's testimony, and he blocked other women from coming up to testify.
Sure,
and they're telling us that we need these two because all these critical these judges are going to be seated. Well, they've proven themselves to fail in the past. Now we got to ride them now. It's a cruel joke. These parties merge closer and closer together as you look at them.
The lines are blurred.
The lines are very blurred.
And people always talk about it and just look at it.
Yeah.
Just look at it. If you really start reading and stop looking at the histrionics and the antics.
Yeah.
You'll see clearly
that,
like I said, I think it was the last show. If you flip a coin, heads or tails, you still catch hell either way.
You catch hell either way.
Either way, it's the same thing.
And it's funny because we say they died to vote. Our people died to vote. Let's deal with that. We look, if you look at Kwame Ture, who was over Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in Mississippi at the time
formerly Stokely Carmichael.
Yeah. So when you look at him and his organizing efforts, and they risked their lives, people died then. They actually were telling the people, even though we're fighting to get you to vote, you have to realize Chicago, they're voting and they're still poor, and so there was a split. So people don't understand when Bill Clinton, the so-called black president, when Bill Clinton really threw Kwame Ture under the bus for the benefit of John Lewis. People don't understand what exactly he was saying because he's no history better than we do.
Well, let's clear that up. What he's speaking about is Bill Clinton at John Lewis's memorial made a comment about the leadership, the young black leadership of SNCC. And he basically was disparaging Kwame Ture's vision and saying that John Lewis ended up being the right one and the right choice.
And so what we don't understand, what was that vision? People say, oh, yeah, well, see, he was militant. He was, no, it goes much deeper than that. at the time in the 1960s, it was Kwame Ture said that even if you vote, if we don't keep an independent party, there was once a faction that wanted to go underneath the Democratic Party that was being pressured by Dr. King and others, and the church and the so-called liberal class to go underneath the Democratic Party. And Kwame Ture said, no, let's remain independent, and we'll put pressure on let's form this third party right now. We'll put pressure on them because America needs to change, period. We're not trying to fight to be a part of this murderous regime. We're actually trying to fight to critique it. And so that's what Bill Clinton was talking about. So John Lewis said, I'll play ball with you all. I'll just let me in, and I'll go after the Vietnams, the Koreas, and the Iraqs and the Afghanistans and all of those things. I will play ball with y'all. And playing ball also means that I will turn the other way as these black boys are being murdered in the street. It doesn't take 30 years to reform the Justice Department. So so we don't understand because we don't look at history. But Bill Clinton understood history. He understood at that moment, it was a critical moment where black people, as they organized, could have became an independent political party and put pressure on the American system before the world. Because the world would have said, your elections are not legitimate because black people are not taking part of it. People don't understand that part of it. We think it's vote or vote and vote. No, if you do not vote, that shows the world that you see it as illegitimate.
Right.
That shows the world that you say this is not a fair election. I'm not going to take part of it.
But they try to make us feel that because we're in the system, we have to, like you said, play the game or play ball.
Even though most of our gains in the system came from us being outside
of the system is what brings it about. But
exactly.
people
like
never,
right now.
Yeah, the people never see that. Like I think one of Kwame's quotes was, while you're picking cotton, that doesn't mean you love picking cotton. You're still plotting against your master on how you can end this so you never would have to pick the cotton. But while you're picking it, but that doesn't make you a lover of the system of slavery. Just like America, while you're participating in the political process, while you're exercising whatever it is, at the same time, your goal can never be clouded. Your goal has to be clear. And our goal has not changed, but we get confused with, we better act like we love and picking cotton. Let's start singing these songs, and let's start swing low and do all of this, and we get caught up into believing that.
Well, that's an excellent point. That's what the problem is now. Okay, now you're telling me I have to vote for Biden and Harris because we have this crazy person named Trump. Okay, but the problem is when we do that because we have to, we got to hear the next 4 years how wonderful Harris is by people who should know better. Then we don't talk about her record at all. When really we need to treat them as though they are the Republican Party. If Biden and Harris wins, we need to be on the outside saying, we don't still trust you. You have to prove yourself to us. Instead, like you just said about the cotton, we start really falling in love with the cotton. That's why they do it to you. They understand that if they make you take a situation because you have to, over time, you actually start to adapt and it becomes normal to you, and you start liking that situation. So that's what happened with Obama. We have to talk about that one day in the show, just how the Obama has been loved and has not, he can't show anything in his record that proves that he should merit this love that we've given him, plus that $1 billion asset that he's become to the capitalist system.
That's it. But, we're going to look at back to this black on black crime issue. People really don't look at, they hear stuff, like you said, buzzwords, but we don't look at it. No. Okay, crimes, usually most people commit crimes on people that look like them. In fact, mostly all people do that because usually they congregate together. Usually they're in the same neighborhood. You usually don't travel far out of your neighborhood to commit a crime, so the crime is going to be in your surrounding familiarity and area. And if you go to another area and commit a crime, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb. So why come with a idiotic statement of what about black on black crime? Well, if a criminal is there, he's going to commit the crime in the area that he's around, and that's likely. Look at white on white crime. In fact, white on white crime is manifested in 2 world wars. White on white crime shows up devastating the entire planet. Like you said, the existential threat to the planet is white supremacy.
And white on white crime, as Amos Wilson always says, white on white crime expresses itself by class. The upper class can commit crime by writing a pen. You take all those people's homes and you can actually kill people. Like during this pandemic, they will show how people are going to die through through depression and loss of income. So you actually have crime that's unseen, that's even more damaging. You can steal more with a pen than you can with a gun.
Absolutely.
And that is a fact. And then so we look at this so-called black on black, and the same people say black on black crime, or the same people say, why are you so pro-black? But yeah, when it comes to the problem, you want to be color, you want to be race conscious, you want to start seeing race all of a sudden. But when it comes to the solution, you say, well, we're all the same. These are the same. These are the same people say, oh, we're all the same. You know, race is a construct, blah blah blah. But then when it comes to crime, you all of a sudden you have a distinction. Oh yeah, well see, but black people are different though when it comes to crime. Right. So this is a game. It's a buzz.
And we have to stop. We have to stop parroting that.
Yeah.
That's our issue.
Yeah, exactly.
Is people just speak off a surface. You know, like last week or whatever. Somebody gonna talk about Google all the time. That's not research. Yeah. You got to get into some books and get to the research, the core of things, and how people think.
Exactly.
You have to look at the underlying forces that are even in your own mind, in your own brain.
Exactly.
You know, and you have to know what you have to be in touch or in tune and take time out to do that, and they know that. Yeah. So that's why they keep us constantly jumping from thing. Or from place to place, or try to keep you entertained with this or that. Yeah, but now, with this time, with this COVID and everything else that's going on, people are having a little bit more time to at least start reflecting on why is the things that are occurring, why are they occurring?
Exactly.
And if I keep reacting, where is this thing taking me?
Exactly.
And so when we talk about crime, we talk about violence, the invisible violence that you spoke about. You know, there is violence. It is violent to write a law that's killing our people. It's violent. They call it white-collar crime. Crime is crime.
Right.
Crime is crime. So they steal billions and trillions with, like you said, with the stroke of a pen or the movement of an account. And you say, oh, it's okay. You take them heroes. You make them heroes.
Right.
Like all of the misgivings of Trump.
Right.
They make heroes out of their criminals. So don't you know, Bonnie and Clyde, heroes. And Jesse James.
And you see that black child who's been taught not to see himself as a part of a group, not to see his color, will then warm up to someone like a Trump and say, well, he's okay. I like him because of X, Y, and Z. No, you like him because you don't have the allegiance to your people that's been bleached out of you through your education and through your and through your entertainment and everything else. So, and then we look at black on black crime also. We don't look at the fact that the law enforcement plays a role in so-called black on black crime, because black on black crime is considered at least a crime. Police killing to black people is not considered a crime. It's been proven by the judicial system that it's not a crime. It is okayed. A murder by the state, murder by the government is different than murder by one citizen to the other. And people don't understand that. We take a elementary view of a college level problem, and that's the problem. We have to look at more deeper at it. It's not, you know, we have to really stop and say, what are the conditioning that we're looking at that causes black people to kill black people in America, but they're not killing each other in Ghana. They're not killing each other in Tanzania. They're very peaceful in Tanzania. I don't see drive-bys in Tanzania. What is conditioning? What is causing this child to change and be that? We have to take a look at that.
Well, we have to look at the social engineering. We have to look at the what Michelle Alexander calls the new Jim Crow.
Yep.
We have to understand that it's manifesting in areas on the block. You know, it's a competition for scarcity of resources, but who made the resources scarce in the first place? There's your criminal right there.
Here it is.
You know, our presence here is a result of criminal activity that nobody has acknowledged.
Exactly.
So it's the crimes are all about us, but they don't become criminal until there's consequences that we are able to bring about. So it's a crime. It's never a crime until you get caught, one.
Exactly.
And then when you get caught, if there's no consequences, so what? That's the attitude.
Exactly.
It's just like it's all kind of things that's manifest. They see it. Attorney General Barr they'll change the stuff right in front of your face. It was a crime before he did it, but now it's not a crime. So our question is, when people are showing you that they'll go with whatever serves their best interest, what are we celebrating? That's why we asked the question, Kamala, what's the difference between white on black crime and black on black crime?
Exactly.
We are the victim.
Exactly.
There's no difference.
Right.
We're the victim in both scenarios, and one doesn't make it worse than the other one. We're victims because of a mindset that was brought on, and that mindset has its depths in our thinking and our programming, and our thinking and programming come from white supremacy, which has been instilled in us through the slave process,
Exactly.
and it's continued to this day. That's the part that we don't get.
Yeah, and we have to combat that white supremacy, and we can combat that white supremacy. We have to go back and look at where did we alter, because our people weren't always like this in terms of falling for this non-racial identity thing. And, because now it's funny because you talk to, like I said, black people about racism and what's happening to us, and they'll go, oh, man, don't talk about the white man. I mean, we
hear about it.
We are worse enemies. I mean, black folk will do bad worse than white folk. Well, all these buzzwords, all these concepts that we did not have coming off of the plantations, and we didn't have in the 1920s and 1930s and 40s. When did it change? It changed when the media and the white institutions said, you know what? It's very interesting because Bobby Wright talks about, as they gave us more and more political power, they had to undermine us by changing what we saw as being successful. We heard a caller last week say, well, we got money now. We got money. Well, that was actually part of that came out of the University of Chicago. And they said if you give people prosperity on one angle, you can deny them freedom, true freedom on the other. So having people appear to have things and material stuff and credit to get that stuff, no matter how much debt they get, they somehow will forget that they don't have freedom. And freedom means that your child can walk outside, and if he gets killed, you know that there's going to be a prosecution. You can't say that now. You can't, like if your child gets locked up and sent to jail for 15, 20 years, you have a hard time finding people to fight for you. There are very few institutions that will fight for you because they're compromised.
The first thought is, what did he do? That's what we hear all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, you did it. You did something.
Yeah, and they say that because they don't want the responsibility to fight that system.
Exactly.
Because and we don't have institutions that will fight for us. Even the NAACP is compromised because it has to borrow funds. It has to get funds, and some of them, like there was a case allegedly with 7-Eleven, and it was a black 7-Eleven franchise owners. Well, 7-Eleven did them wrong, and they appealed to the NAACP, and the NAACP said, well, we can't help you because 7-Eleven gives us a large donation. That's what we're talking about. That's when you start looking at your powerlessness.
Like I said,
you have to change that.
It's A. Philip Randolph,
yes,
the civil rights activist, who said you get your ideas from where you get your funding.
That is very important.
So until and unless we are independent in our financing of our organizations, we don't have an independent thought.
That is very important what you just said. You get your ideas where you get your funding. You get your ideas where you get your funding. Sometimes these people would put in front of us who say, I'm Trump this, I love this, I love that. All you have to do is trace the money. You trace the money, then you can trace the behavior. And the behavior is dictated by the money that the dominant society can throw around, So we have to, once again, the reason why we're throwing up books and we're throwing up history is because you have to take a look at this from a deep, deep level. And you see, what's interesting now, you see a lot of black mayors, female mayors, who are having a conflict with their black constituents, like in Atlanta and like in Chicago. You see the children out in the street and these black mayors not knowing, should I bring out the National Guard or should I allow to try to understand it? And now, see, when the crisis hits, that's when you want to start really looking at the underlying issues and why those things happen, So, so it's very interesting when you start looking at the fact that we've been running away from our blackness, but at a time when we need it, we are unprepared to tap into it and unprepared to understand it. And that's what you look at these black mayors. Even though they have political power, they're estranged from their people,
That's it. And you got to look at this. So our question is, we can't be coddled into believing that just because we see the face that the interests of the masses of our people are being served. And I think for us to move forward, we just going to really have to bite the bullet on some hard truths. We're sold out every day.
That's right.
Constantly.
No, we are.
And we are. And we are okay with it, though.
Yeah. On our school boards, we're sold out. We have teachers in front of our children who sell out. My parents were educators, and they actually had black teacher friends who said, I'll never give a black child an A. And we don't understand how deep this anti-black attitude is among us as a people. We don't understand that split that occurred. And this is what we're pushing. We're constantly pushing education and learning and going back to our racial identity to use that. And we say this because if you look at the Asians, they have very low turnout rates when it comes to voting. but they're extremely successful in United States society. The Asians aren't running a politician or the vice president. I know they ran a politician recently, but that was only recently. They for the most part take care of their boundaries and who they are. When you come into their neighborhoods, you understand who they are. The writing on the wall tells you who they are. When you walk into a store, it tells you by the cultural items in the store, it tells you who they are. And their children are bolstered up because of that. We feel get away from that to get power. They feel go to that to get power. That's our overall model.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the comments, and they want to talk about the taxes and the things that's going on in the economy and all of that. Those are games. I mean, understand this. Okay, the government gets its revenue through taxes, right? So if there's a large tax cut, at the same time you increase the spending, which has happened under this administration, then the future generations are going to have to pay for that. They're going to have to pay for that. And so it's interesting because it's usually the opposite argument. And that's how you need to watch how this game is played.
Right.
Usually it was the Democrats that were accused of overspending and not paying for whatever the programs, entitlement programs and everything else that they talk about. But now you have a Republican who has created the greatest deficit in history. Right. And they're quiet as church mice. Yeah.
Normally they're yelling smaller government. And these are games played by the elite. They have these two parties in front of us. They dangle race around, so we'll always constantly be talking to each other as though we're going to make headway there. But meanwhile, the treasury is being stolen by the elite. They want to privatize. They want to privatize the school. They want to privatize even the police, the post office. They want to get their hands on the treasury. When Obama leaves and now is closing in on being a billionaire, we have to ask, where is that money coming from? And who did you do favors for when you were in office? That's why you really look at the two parties, you will find that on issues, they're not that far apart on issues. They're very slightly apart, and especially foreign policies. They're all for the same thing. They're all looking at Venezuela like they're chopping their guns for Venezuela. You don't hear a contrary opinion. That's why if you look at privatization of schools, both parties believe in privatizing the schools and moving away from the public schools, and we're missing that altogether. Trump wants to do it through vouchers, and other people want to do it through charter, but it's the same thing. It's the same program, the same game, And so when you talk about issues, if you really look at the issues, you're going to find that they're closer to each other than they are apart.
And as they move towards this defund the police and everything else, they've defunded education for years.
Exactly.
When you look at the budget, they spend 10.5 or 10.6 times as much annually on defense than they do on education.
And speaking on that, you remember Betsy DeVos's brother had a private army. Right. Now they want a private police department. Right. And people don't understand. You see, when they start pushing these terms, these buzzwords, defund the police, that's because they're looking at that $1 billion that they spend on police just in one city alone.
Like Blackwater domestic. Get ready for that.
Get ready for that.
If you guys not familiar with Blackwater, in case you don't remember, those are the mercenaries organizations.
Prince. Yes. Yeah. As a matter of fact, they committed atrocities, and because they weren't operating under legitimate state means, that they were able to get away with
and
it.
You can't bring them under international law.
You can't bring them under international law.
Because see, this is what we're saying. When you they're not a nation in an agreement with anyone. They always figure out ways to get around and do their debauchery, murder.
I was about to say that. When they're losing, they join you. And when they saw this swing of people, or this upsurge of people in the streets, they said, okay, let's get in front of this to go where we want it to go. They've been eyeing on these budgets for a long time, this $1 billion budget. They said, you know what, this is our chance to get on this prison budget, or these police budget. Let's get in front of that and get that money. So we'll start saying defund the police. Whenever we're in the street and whenever we're winning, they give us an issue that's really not our issue, like Black Lives Matter. We have serious issues with Black Lives Matter.
We had another question asking if Trump has the power to postpone the election and cope through COVID and all that stuff. He got the power to do what he wants until somebody stops him. So the answer is yeah. But people always talk about what somebody can't do until they do it. Yeah. And then he does everything, and people look like, oh, he did that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's on paper.
Yeah.
It's on paper.
Yeah.
That's all I can tell you. It's on paper,
And it's
but when
building
people
that.
don't stand up and execute, you get into these arguments and these compromises on that. Yeah, you already see the mail slowing down.
Yeah.
You already see in mail ballot. You know what's coming down the pipe with that. You had a hanging Chad a few years ago. So what you think is about to happen?
And see the time to argue whether or not he can postpone elections was 20 years ago.
Exactly.
So that's what we're saying. We're saying the time to argue about who we are and where we're going is now. But people are like, I don't want to talk about that. Oh, race doesn't matter. Because we were talking about FEMA and those things back then when they're talking about suspending elections, when we talk about the King Alfred plan and you know, all of these so-called, what people say, conspiracy theories. Now you're looking at it, because if I would have said they're going to suspend the election one day, you would have said, oh, that's a conspiracy theory.
Y'all them wild
ideas. Now you guys actually hear them talking about it in the so-called mainstream press more and more. So that's what we're saying. You have to start reading and looking at the tea leaves and see where this country's going.
Right, and if we sit up and you know, people they want to act like ostriches.
Yeah.
They just do not want to face
they want
the
to talk
reality.
about Cardi B
Being fearful and
Megan Thee
party. Yes,
Stallion. Like,
as we party. What did I say? I can't remember what I said, but it was something about instead of we're not invited. You know what I'm saying? We want to party. We want to move on and feel good about a horrible situation because of fear, basically. And we have to get over those fears and start being assertive.
Yeah.
And you'll see the things. The energy will change.
Yeah.
Your people believe in the Wizard of Oz. Basically, you know, the little man is still behind the curtain, pulling in this big old monstrous machine.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're afraid of the machine.
Yeah.
I said, but you got to be able to face that and move past that. And then we'll be fine.
And so when the caller asked, like the different issues, and one reason why I said things don't change, gentrification started in one administration, went through another, and is walking through Trump's. Gentrification started at least 20, 30 years ago. So I'm saying that is an agenda that's not going to change. You're going to see black people swept off the streets and put in other places into the city and gotten out of the way. And you're going to see traditionally black neighborhoods like Harlem was, like in Chicago was, like D.C. was. You're going to see that around the country. And black people are going to find themselves on the outside. And it started 30 years ago, regardless of who was elected. So that's our point.
Well, that's our point. That's our major point. I mean, people are distracted. You know, they're afraid of COVID. They're still debating whether COVID is a hoax and all of these other non-points. You know, whatever it is, it has you at home.
Yeah.
Whatever it is shut down global economy. Whatever it is, hoax or not, whatever you want to debate about it or not, you have to deal with the reactions behind it. And you have been impacted by it.
Our powerlessness has come to
and that's what manifests.
Yeah, you can see us in the hospitals, and people really start looking at the treatment level of black people, and they start to tell you that we have underlying conditions. No, it's not that.
They start blaming the victim again.
Yeah, they blame the victim. This once again, but this is our powerlessness.
You know we in poor health.
Yeah.
You should have put that extra piece of fat back down.
Yeah, exactly.
You might have made it through COVID this time.
Exactly. Like Big Bubba in the South. Big
old
Bubba.
I eat fat back too.
Yeah, he ate that pig before he killed. And that Big Bubba and gonna survive COVID, and somehow we not. That don't make any sense. Especially when they were talking about all these opioid addicted white children. What happened to them? And they were also talking about white males dying for the first time ever in certain states. What happened to them?
But that's back to our topic of the crime, because see, they didn't criminalize opioids.
Yeah, exactly. No, they did.
When they dropped crack in the black community.
Yeah, exactly.
You got people sitting in the cell right now behind that.
Exactly.
So we got to look at it. So anybody want to call in? You have about 5 minutes to get it in. 424-390-6993.
Call in and tell us what you think about Kamala Harris.
390-6993, and let us know what you think about her. We haven't heard anything.
Harris.
I mean,
exactly.
A lot of people
Biden,
are Trump.
like, you know, because Kamala Harris might be president.
Biden is blatant, but he said, you know, he was on that breakfast show, I think, once, and he made that comment about, he's like, y'all gonna vote for me. I don't care what I do.
Exactly. Yeah.
Basically,
Exactly.
I ain't got to address your issues. You've been voting for me ever since I've been running. You kept me in office all this time.
It's a one-party system, and we're gonna collude when we need to collude, and when we don't, y'all gonna vote for us like y'all normally do. That's the truth.
One party, and we not invited.
Yeah,
that's what I keep telling
that's
people.
The truth.
You got a party that you might be lucky if you serving drinks at.
Yeah, it's interesting though. 'Cause one thing we're not talking about is we had a black Republican last week, but there's a lot of young black males who are supporting Trump because because their lack of understanding of the situation. So we're gonna have to one day revisit that in terms of our.
I think one
more intelligent.
Well, one thing we never we haven't addressed is that our people have always been attracted to power.
Right. That's true.
And they see that as power. So they're going to be attracted, and our children are going to want to be on the winning team.
Right. That's true.
And it's evident. So. What we have to do is reshape the image of power, and what does power really look like?
That's right.
When they see it, they can respond to power appropriately.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
But it's just a lot of confusion, but we're calm.
Yeah.
You just have to you can think your way out of this.
Right.
But we have to start thinking. We got to stop reacting so much. We stop acting as if we're not in danger,
right?
Because we are.
Got a caller? All right, put him out.
Okay, caller.
Hey, good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, sir.
My main question is that I feel like we're at a crossroads right now. It's really, really rough for us politically. We have Trump on one side, and we have Joe Biden, and Joe Biden brought in Kamala Harris because he knew he was in trouble. I mean, pretty much he was a done deal. Trump had it locked in. If it wasn't for he needed to get something to bring to help him get elected. But I'm really at a point where I don't know which way to vote, and I'm really stuck right now because I'll be honest. With the amount of money that I make more money with Trump, but I can't stand Trump. I can't stand what he stands for as a black man. I can't feel like I want to sell out for Trump, so I don't want to do that. But on the other side, I can't. I don't feel good about Joe Biden.
Right.
And Kamala Harris. I don't know. I know that doesn't make me feel any better because I don't know. She's with. I'm not saying it's bad for her to be married to a white man or anything like that, but it feels like I'm still not getting anything that's going to be on our side.
That's right.
And so where do we go? Where do we go right now? What do we do?
Good question.
I think we need to plan for the next 4 years. You have to start, like we said, the problems we're facing now were really started germinating 15, 20 years ago. So we have to really stop, because ever since I can remember voting, it's always been the lesser of two evils. We got to vote because, this is horrible. It's always been the scare tactic. What we have to do is basically this election, you can go vote for Biden and and Harris. We have to really look at Harris because Harris is not just her husband's white. It's just her behavior has been very detrimental to black males and females. She laughed at black parents who were threatened with the truancy laws.
Right.
She laughed at it. I mean, just a really heartlessness she showed. So what we have to do is really start going back and whatever friends you have, you got 4 or 5 friends, you got to bring them together instead of talking about the Lakers and football and basketball and all the other stuff. We really got to start talking about, look, how can we formulate some type of organization amongst ourselves? Because we used to have that back in the day. We have to start coming together and start looking at the next 4 years. Yeah. Where are we going to be the next 4 years?
And then build a longer term, even in 4 years, because this didn't happen overnight. And then we have to look at investing in the future and putting us on solid footing. And that's why we say we have to build an independent party where we deal with our issues and not just hand our votes over to people, but until they give us something in return. And that's never going to be addressed as long as we keep playing this game. That's
right. And then also, once you start looking at your school district, we have to really start looking at the institutions that are in our lives right now that we can control. It's the school districts and the police departments. We really have to start getting out with
and holding these churches accountable again, because they used to be a center for development of leadership leadership and political
There
thought.
were major sinners. It's no I mean, it's there's no accident why, you know, that you had the Martin Luther Kings and Albert Anthony's and others who came out of the church, because that's where the people were going. Wherever the people are, we got to go back to. And like you're saying, caller, you know, it's almost a push, but we, you know, we want to get Trump out for different reasons. He is hurting us on others. So we're kind of forced. And that's what's really critical. We have to remember, we have to really hold this against the Democratic Party. They knew that we had a candidate we could not vote for. So guess what? They decided to give us these two because they knew you got to vote for them. And that was wrong. That was Machiavellian type of tactic, you know. And they knew that, oh, yeah, they're going to hate Trump so bad. Now we can give them candidates who they got to go to. And so that's why I say next 4 to 8 to, you know, to 12 years, we have to really start laying out an agenda. But right now you can take over your local politics and things that you can affect, or really like your school board. You have to look at the public school and what's going on. We have more black teachers and agendas such as that.
But our main thing is we have to start being informed. And we're not going to do this, you know, shooting from the hip.
Right.
We have to start informing ourselves, looking at people's records, looking at their lies, looking at how they waffle, looking at how they are progressive on one issue apparently, and then but their voting record is contradictory to that, and then hold them accountable for that. Call them out on it, and not be so polite. We're too polite about being wrong, and we can't be that. You know, at some points in time, you know, you have to let them know. You know, it's going to be consequences behind what you're doing here, and then follow through on those consequences. Because if we don't, you know, we're just bumping our gums, and it doesn't. They take you. They don't take you seriously. They just call you a joke. And if you want, it's nothing funny. Like who was that? Abernathy that says, "I don't laugh when I'm not tickled, and I don't scratch when I don't itch." That's right. So we can't stop. We got to stop shuffling along and make a stand. You know, and stop being a minstrel show for the world.
Yeah. Thanks, caller, for calling. Yeah, appreciate you.
So anyway, I guess that's it. We're gonna have to wrap this up. Yep. So in other words, our whole point, I guess, is Kamala Harris. I think she's answered it by her record. I don't care what rhetoric comes out of her mouth. I don't care what political climate there is right now. Her record speaks that she doesn't have our interest. She has her own interests, but she doesn't have our own our collective interests. Our collective interests, and that's what we have to have. Yep. So I mean, as far as if you're going to vote for the lesser of two evils, I don't know what to tell you. But I know the outcome of that is not productive for us.
It's not, and I'll just say that it's a trap that the Democratic Party knew they were putting us in. Is really a harm done by the Democratic Party to us, because think about it. We're out in the street fighting police brutality, and they give us a candidate that was soft on police. Just think about it. It was Machiavellian tactic. They didn't have to give you a candidate coming from California. They already had California in terms of the Democrats in their pocket, but they gave you a candidate like this to slap you in your face because they said you're out in the street fighting against police. Well, we're going to give you a candidate that actually has been pro-police and anti-black male and anti-black female, you know, and so it's really a slap in the face, and we need to hold the Democratic Party. Once we get past Trump, we need to really need to look at this Democratic Party and really hold its feet to the fire. Even if we don't win, we have to stop trying to win every election. Some elections, we just have to organize and put our issues on the table and not win. You cannot, when you go to negotiate, if you go to negotiate with anybody and they know you are desperate, that you have to sell, that's when you get the worst offer. Right. You get the better offer when you're at the table and you're willing to walk away and say, take this. And we have to be able to say, take this. Ever since, like I said earlier, ever since I've been voting, they've always come up with the lesser of two evils. You know, we need this. You know, America catch the cold, we get the flu. All these crazy old sayings they've been saying for the last 30, 40 years. We need to say, stop it. We're gonna face the fire, whatever that is.
That's it.
And then say we're gonna organize ourselves for our own independent party.
Yeah, we in the fire anyway.
Yeah,
we choosing between
the fire. In America, you're in the fire.
We're choosing between Lucifer and Satan
in America,
and we catching hell.
And we're gonna talk about that too. That's a deeper discussion. Yeah. All right.
Okay. So till the next time, don't forget to click subscribe. And we'll catch you next time on Don't Talk Politics.